Hello everybody, welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be going over my top 5 for each role for patch 11.1. So as always, if you enjoy the content, please be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps out a ton on the channel. It's easy, it's free, just takes a couple of clicks. Just subscribe, like, helps out a ton, and then come by, check out the stream. We stream every night starting around midnight Eastern Standard Time. Only on YouTube, usually go till about 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Very friendly, chill community. We'd love to have you. It's a great time. It's a chance in the future I might scale it back a little bit to start at like 11 and maybe go till 3 or 4 or something like that. We'll see. I've been doing some flex lately with some of my buddies on stream just to get some more organized play in there, just to have a different kind of content for you. But I also do want to do quite a lot of solo queue as well. So we'll be switching back and forth there. So we'll probably start off with some solo queue, maybe if we started that earlier time, and then move into flex later on in the stream. But we'll see how it goes. Anyways, come by, check it out. It's a great time. And then check out the rest of the content as well. I'm going to have all kinds of fresh guides, tier lists, patch notes, every single patch, just new content always coming out. So look at that. Speaking of which, I did an in-depth support tier list video where I break down the support meta and walk you through the top 10 to 15 support picks. So I'll have that linked at the very beginning of this video, so you can click on that, go by and check that out. So we're going to go through support kind of quickly here, just because I have a whole video separately about that, but then we're going to go into the other ones in a bit more depth. But we are going to try to cover 25 champions here, so we're going to have to move along pretty quickly. Okay, so as far as support goes, the name of the game here is just engage. I think you really want to play something with engage just so you can make those plays and try to snowball the game. Enchanters got hit pretty hard in the preseason, which I talk about in depth in the support video, because all of their items cost a lot more. And some of the stuff that made them special compared to tanks, like having access to much more CDR and having access to more items, usually being able to get to about 3 items allowed them to scale through tougher laning phases sometimes and eventually just dominate the late game. But now supports are constrained usually to about 2 items per game. The enchanter items are more expensive, and they're just, a lot of them are objectively just less powerful for their money, right? So like, yes, Mandate is pretty good. Yes, Moonstone, unlike Yuumi and a couple of champions, is very good, but it's not like way better than the tank items, which is, in last season, the support items for enchanters were just way better. Tanks just had better base stats, and tanks had better CC and all of that kind of stuff. Much better early game in a lot of circumstances. But a lot of that has changed. Now tanks have some of the better items as well. They have Locket, and then they have a much improved Zeke's, especially on champions that have low cooldown CC. And they have access to Knight's Vow, which I didn't really like too much at the start, but after playing with it a lot, it's actually pretty handy. It basically just prevents 15% damage to your ally whenever they're trying to assassinate them, which is pretty big. And then you can even go for Abyssal Mask in some matchups to give your team an extra 10% damage. So yes, you do have Mandate for enchanters. Yes, you can get Staff of Flowing Water, but Staff of Flowing Water doesn't have any ability haste on it, which feels really bad, and it has no survivability on it, and the buff only lasts for 3 seconds. So it is a very strong item. It's a good buff, but I just think that tank itemization is much more... it's in a much better equilibrium with enchanter itemization. They're very similar now, and that means that tanks are just going to have the edge, because they still start the game with more armor, more magic resist, more health, usually more lockdown CC, better health regen in the laning phase, higher kill threat. They just have it all. And now they have a lot more ability haste. They can spam those items more too, because now you've got your first item, whether it's Locket or Shurelya's or whichever item you want to get, it's going to have 20 ability haste. And then Zeke's has 20 ability haste. And then there's a rune now that I think gives you 9 ability haste. So you can get up to 49 ability haste just off of 2 items without going that far out of your way. And that's equal to 33% CDR. Last season, you could only get 20% CDR. And that was if you just went Knight's Vow into Zeke's, right? If you went Locket, you lost the CDR there. And Locket was pretty good in a lot of circumstances. So tanks just had a really hard time getting CDR last season. No longer the case. Now tanks, in some situations, might even have more CDR than enchanters, right? If you're an enchanter and you go for Boots of Swiftness or Mobility Boots, Mandate, and then Staff of Flowing Water, you're only going to have 20% CDR, or 20 ability haste, rather than the tanks are going to have 50. So that just means that champions, especially that have a lot of CC and really nice engage ultimates or other abilities are just going to get to spam those abilities more, which is good. So that's Leona. Her ultimate's already on a 90-second cooldown, level 1, which is ridiculous. It's got 1200 engage range. And then it just feels like you can perma-stun people. Like, almost literally with your E is going to be, after all the ability haste, like a 4-second cooldown. Your Q is going to be like a 3-second cooldown. She's very tanky, brings a lot of damage with her passive to team fights. So she just scales really, really well and performs exceptionally well in this meta right now. She's been pick, ban, and pro. And she's just a super strong champ right now. I have Rakan a little bit higher than some of the other ones. He is versatile. He can go for that Mandate plus Staff of Flowing Water, which I think is ideal on him if you can get away with it. If you need a tankier item, you can go for a Zeke's build. You could do Locket conceivably in some situations, although you will be hurting for mana. He does run out of mana pretty quickly, so Mandate with that mana regen is kind of useful. But I just like Rakan. He can engage through the minions, just like a lot of these champions. Everyone except for Thresh can engage through the minions. And he can have that scaling capacity if you want to take him in that direction. Roams really well, shielding, good against assassins. He does have the longer cooldowns early on, and mana can be a problem. His main form of trading is a lot less damage early on as well when you W and then E back to your ally versus, someone like a Leona or an Alistar. All of their trading tools early are going to do extra damage, so he can get out, he can get killed, or I guess he can, the shield is still very useful in all ends, but his poke is going to be a lot less damage early on than some of the other champions out there. But nevertheless, I think he is very good, very versatile, and he definitely dominates team fights once he gets a couple of items more than some of the other champs on this list. Maokai's another one I think that has risen up a little bit. And a big thing with Maokai is he's one of the few champs that actually has versatility with his itemization right now. A lot of other champs that had been versatile in the past, like Rakan, have lost a lot of their flexibility because he's just kind of priced into Mandate and Staff of Flowing Water most of the time. Whereas before, there were 3 or 4 different items you could get at the start. You could get Athene's last season. You could start off with Shirelia's. You could get Zeke's early, and then second, you could go Redemption, you could go Ardent Censer. You had all these options. You don't have as many now with a lot of these champions, especially Rakan. But Maokai does have that because he can go for Mandate early on, which is popular and powerful. Now that build has been nerfed a bit just because your initial seed explosion does 40 or 50 less damage than it did a couple of patches ago before they nerfed Mandate. So if your ally doesn't follow up, it's not going to be as much damage. But he does have other builds as well. The Locket build's actually his highest win rate build right now, although it has a pretty low pick rate overall at only 236. So most of the time, you probably want to go for Mandate. But some people are even rushing Dead Man's Plate if you want that engage, because with Maokai, he has very short engage range. I think it's 525 engage range on his W, and his ult has a long range, but it's very slow. So it's difficult to engage with him, but he also has very good vision control with his seeds. And they do pretty good damage too, up to 14% max health damage if they're in a bush, and it's maxed out. So that's why a lot of people like to go for Mandates. You have the mana regen, ability haste, ability power. You have all the stuff that he wants. You can spam those seeds, and it gives them that extra 36 damage every time that they hit somebody. So that is very nice. But if you want to go for more engage, then you can go for Dead Man's. You are going to run out of mana if you do that in the laning phase early, but you can roam around a lot better if that's what your team needs, and you are going to have more solid engages overall just with your W, even in the laning phase. So that's something that people think about. Then if you want to double down on the AP, you can go Demonic Embrace. So your seeds, I think, apply a burn over 2 seconds whenever they trigger on someone out of a bush. This is going to effectively give you about 4 seconds of the Azakana burn. So that's going to be pretty handy. But then you can also go Dead Man's. You notice Dead Man's second item is 70% win rate. So it's a very, very good item on him. It's just a lot of people don't get it. And then if you need to, you can go for the Morellonomicon as well if your team needs that. So there's just several different options. You can go for a blend of a bunch of different tank and engage type of options or AP options depending on what your team needs. And he does have that poke. He has the good vision. He has a lot of CC with his W and his R. He has really high base stats. And if you take Aftershock, which you should, I would not go for Comet or anything cute like that. You really do need to be tanky. so that you can properly peel for your AD carry and not get blown up by assassins. So I think Aftershock does give you quite a bit of tankiness, though. So I just think he's pretty versatile and pretty strong. Now, Alistar is another one that I have on here that it's going to be pretty good. And I haven't really been too high on Alistar in the past, but I think that several things in the preseason have changed to help him become a lot more powerful. Number one, there's just a lot more CDR. Like I mentioned before, this is always a problem with Alistar. He's had long cooldowns on his Q, on his W. So traditionally, and he almost always wants Moby boots. There's absolutely no way you're going Ionian boots on him. And you just couldn't get... It was just hard to get enough ability power to get your rotation off multiple times in a fight. But now you can. So he's going to be a lot more powerful with that. There's also fewer items, so it's a lot less likely that he's going to get outscaled later on by the Janna, by the Sona, because they're both going to be on 2 items, because the tank items cost about the same as the enchanter items, right? Like Locket 2,500, Nice Vow 2,300, Mandate 2,500, Staff of Flowing Water 2,300. So now they're at parity, versus in the past, you'd be maybe 300 to 500 gold behind the enchanters, because they'd be able to get these items that are like 2,000, 2,100 gold or something like that. And you'd be getting items that are about 2,400 gold. So you kind of got a little bit more gold parity going on there. And there are several other builds that have kind of been popping up lately that I haven't tried. Like this Phase Rush build is interesting, and the premise behind that is you WQ into them, and then you auto attack, and then you're going to be able to run them down and make sure that you get that E stun, which is pretty handy. And it does allow you to take Nimbus Cloak as well, and they aren't doing this, but if you take Hex Flash with Nimbus Cloak, I know it used to work this way, and I think it still does. If you use the Hex Flash out of a bush, then it's going to give you, every time you Hex Flash, it's going to give you that Nimbus Cloak extra movement speed. So that can be pretty handy. I still think that Conqueror has a higher win rate, though, if you scroll down here. No, the Nimbus Cloak is actually higher. It's pretty close, but Nimbus Cloak is about 1.5% higher, so I'll have to try that out. But he just allows you to dominate early. He can engage through the minions, just WQ. There's no way to get away from it. He roams really well. He dives really well. And a lot of the AD carries, which we'll talk about here in a second, are very dominant early game AD carries that can snowball super hard. I think AD carry is a very strong role right now overall, as long as you're playing the top 4 or 5 AD carries. So if you want to get your AD carry snowballing early, it's a good matchup. Now, he's having a hard time in Pro. He had about a 41% win rate versus, Leona had a 59% win rate in Pro. So if Leona's up, you probably want to just take Leona instead of Alistar a lot of the time, but Alistar is handy. He's also pretty strong into poke lanes too, because he's got that roar every wave or so. He's going to heal himself and heal your ADC, which is very, very useful in the game. So overall, good champ, nice roaming, pretty good damage overall, nice sort of sustain in the laning phase. His CC is not as strong as Leona's because he only has the W and the Q. His ult doesn't have any CC. It does help you tower dive early, and it does make you very tanky for all ends early, but ultimately it's going to be less CC than some of the other options. And then Thresh is the final one that I'll put on here. He does have a good win rate right now, and the CDR is very, very good on him because of the way that his Q scales, because it takes off 3 flat regardless of what your initial CDR is on his hook every time he hits somebody with the hook. So for example, if you have 10 seconds on your hook, it'll take it down to 7. If you have 4 seconds cooldown on your hook, it'll take it down to 1 second on the hook. Now you're not going to get it that low, but just overall CDR historically scales extremely well with him. And your Dark Passage, your W, has a lot of utility in fights. It's a shield. It can let people reposition in fights. So the CDR changes are very, very good for him. And he works really well with the new Locket and with Zeke's Convergence as well. He has kind of a longer cooldown ult that you really don't want to be using proactively. You want to be using that to peel a lot of the time. Or if you do land the hook and you want to get in, you can use it. But you're not going to be using it to start fights most of the time. And so that was a problem with old Zeke's with Thresh, is it was a long cooldown, and sometimes you just couldn't activate the Zeke's whenever you wanted. Well, now anytime that you hit a piece of CC, then you're going to get the Zeke's activation, and it's going to last for 8 seconds. So the new Zeke's is a lot better for him. So he does have good itemization. He can take Guardian, which can help out against assassins and is very handy. But he's just super skill intensive, right? You have to hit those hooks. Everyone's used to playing against Thresh. He's got the half-second cooldown. So you have to get really creative. You have to anticipate where they're going and lead your hook and just, hope that they flash where you're leading it to. Or you have to get at them out of bushes where they don't have vision. Or you have to do like the no-look hook. There's a lot of different tricks of the trade you can do with Thresh, but you're definitely working hard to play very efficiently on him. So he has all the tools. He is very strong. I think his damage is a little bit lower, and he's not as tanky as some of the other ones. He doesn't have any defensive steroids early on outside of Aftershock, which he doesn't even take most of the time now. And he starts off with really low base armor compared to like Leona and Alistar. I think his base armor is like 28 or something. I don't remember the exact number on it, but it's very low versus Leona and Alistar are like 44 armor. So if they engage on you, they're probably going to beat you up in the early game. So you have to be very careful on him. But if you do have the skill, he does historically have a good matchup into Leona because you can flay back her E early. And Alistar, you have to be very fast to flay back the Alistar, but you can do it. So you do have, if you're really good on Thresh, you can get a skill advantage in those matchups. But if you screw up, if Alistar connects or Leona connects with you, it's going to be a big problem. So, because their raw stats are just going to be higher than yours early. But he can be very good if you're efficient on him. The new Shurelya's buff might help him out a little bit. He does have a 3% higher win rate with Shurelya's than Locket, so that could be an option. But anyways, good champ, very skill intensive. You got to know what you're doing with him. Okay, let's talk about the ADCs here a little bit. So ADCs have actually been in a pretty good spot as far as ADCs go for the last few patches, and a lot of this is people still are not buying the most optimal items on these ADCs, and that's why you see a lot of them are like the 50 to 52% win rate. And a lot of champs, by the way, a lot of the supports also have come down in win rate and that as well. There are a lot of champs that are like 51 to 52, but there are not very many outliers at all that are 53. Like Nami came down a little bit, she's 52 and change. Malachi's 52 and change. So there is kind of this equalization of supports kind of near that 50 to 52% win rate, but nothing that really pops out statistically as being super OP. And the same is true with AD carries. Tristana came down a little bit. She's 52.5. Jin's 52.5. He was 54 a couple patches ago. So there's a little bit more balance that's going on here. But number one on my list right now is going to be Tristana. And she does take a little bit more skill. It doesn't seem like a lot of skill, but the big thing about Tristana is this rocket jump is so obnoxious. If you play against a good Tristana, I think maybe a few nights ago. The way this works is if you start your jump, if you're in the motion of taking off, then you're basically immune to CC. They buffer it, and they said they're not going to remove that. And it's really OP. Like, you can literally jump out of Blitzcrank hooks, Thresh hooks, Ash arrows, anything. Like, I've seen it, like, I was trying to play Leona, I think it was Leona against, no, it was Nautilus, and he would wait until that missile was just about to hit him, and then just buffer and jump out of it. So it's almost like you have a QSS if you time it correctly in a lot of these situations, which is ridiculous. That's how it works. However, if you are in the air already, then people can hit you and knock you out of the air. So it's all about that timing, but if you can get that right, she's probably one of the most slippery ADCs out there. Ezreal can do it as well if he times it correctly on his E, but he can just not get hit in the first place as well. So she has a great escape that's also like 900 range. So you can jump like 2 flash distances away. And you can jump forward. And it does so much damage whenever you land on somebody in the early game. I don't know if it's saying here how much damage it is. I'm not going to pull her up on League Wiki, but if you trigger this bomb on somebody early, like if you jump on them with W and then like at level 2 and throw your bomb on them, you can throw the bomb while you're midair as well, and I think you can get 1 auto attack off while you're midair before you land. The combo ends up doing something like 400 or 500 damage with the bomb plus the jump. And then if your bomb explodes, people on stream didn't know this the other night, if your bomb explodes with the E, so you hit them 4 times and it blows up, it resets your jump. So your jump resets on kills, assists, and bomb explosions. So you can double jump on people. So you can so like level 2, your Leona goes in, you jump on them with the W, you drop the E, your bomb explodes, you can jump again after they flash, And then after you kill them, you can jump again to either get away or to jump on their support and make sure you can kill their support. So she can just keep resetting these jumps, and it makes it extremely difficult to deal with her, especially when she's ahead, because there's just no escape. It's 900 range. Then she can jump to engage on you, and if you don't have flash, you're dead. It slows you by 60% for a certain amount too. 3 seconds when it's maxed. Now you're not going to max it a lot of the time, but even at level 1, it's still a 1 second slow. And what you'll do with her is you take Hail of Blades and you go Kraken. And that way, whenever you jump on them and you throw the bomb, then you're going to get those 3 hits really quickly to make the bomb detonate. And then that's also going to trigger your Kraken, so that you get damage off of that. Then you can finish them off with your ult, which does 300 damage at level 1 for some reason and is on a 2-minute cooldown. So your ult also knocks people back. I don't remember what the range is, but it's pretty far. So you can shoot it up to 550, I think. And it just pushes everybody back. And even if there's a bunch of people that are grouped up, even though you only target one person and only deals damage to one person, it'll knock back anyone that's close to them. So you have like this big pushback mechanic too. So it's so difficult to get on her late game because her range scales over time. So she can stay pretty safe on the back line, and she can jump away if she needs to, and she can blow everybody back with her R. So it's just almost impossible to get a hold of her late game. And she gets resets, so she can keep repositioning as more and more people drop. And she has a really nice attack speed steroid as well. I mean, you get up to 110% extra attack speed with this, and your range gets over Caitlyn range later in the game. So she's just really, really strong. Early game powerhouse, snowballs super well, pushes lanes really well with her bomb and just her normal buster shot. She can even jump on the wave with her W if she wants to. Takes towers really quickly. People forget you can drop that bomb on the tower, and that does a lot. And when it explodes off the tower, it gets extra range. So if people are standing next to the tower when that blows up, it does the full bomb damage to them on the explosion. So that can really catch people off guard. You know, if they're trying to hang around the tower and they're sort of low on health and they're not paying attention to that bomb, they're just trying to CS, it can blow people up off of that. So she's just really, really good. Has almost no weakness in her game. The only thing that I would say about Triss right now that historically has been problematic is it's hard to control the wave. So if you're trying to freeze a wave and not push, or if you're trying to last hit under tower, it's really hard to do that because once you put points in explosive charge, the minions are just automatically going to blow up. Like, you can't control it. And so if you are getting pushed in a lane, if you're against something like Seraphine, Miss Fortune, or Lux Jin, or something like that, and you've got like a Yumi on your team, like something that's not going to help you push at all, then it might be a tough time for you. But if you've got some of these top tier supports on your team that are going to engage, that are going to fight early on, then I think she has some of the biggest snowball potential of anybody. And that's why she's got my top spot. Okay, Jin should be a surprise to no one. He's going to be on everybody's top 5. It's just a question of where you put him right now. There are a lot of different items you can get with him as well. I think that Gale Force is super strong on almost any ADC right now. Trist, the reason I don't do Gale Force on Trist, I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but with your jump, if you use Gale Force mid-jump, then you don't get the landing anymore. It doesn't do the damage. It might even be disabled while you're mid-air, I'm not sure. But I'm pretty sure that you can't activate Gale Force mid-lane to reposition your landing. Otherwise, I feel like she'd be getting it. She'd be really OP. And she has that special interaction with Kraken and Hail of Blades. Like, anyone that's going to get the Hail of Blades, it's likely that Kraken's going to be very good with them. But yeah, with Jin, it's 54% win rate, right? If you're going for Gale Force. So why is this so strong on him? Well, first of all, he does a lot of damage in the early game. So this does so much execute damage. I mean, look at it. It's basically 200 base damage with 45% scaling with your bonus attack damage. And it does 50% to targets... or it says increase against low health targets by up to 50%. So that means that, and I don't know what low health is, I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's basically like 300 damage early on off of an item active that's on a 1-minute cooldown that also basically gives you a flash. Not quite as good of a flash, but it's still really, really good. Oh, it says it right there. You get the max amount of damage when they're below 30%. So it's just a super good item. Like, it's so hard to hit somebody that knows what they're doing Gale Force, because you can dodge out of Leona ults, you can dodge out of, Thresh hooks, Blitz hooks, Bard ults. Ash arrows. Like, there's so much outplay potential with this as far as just using the mobility, and of course just your just running someone down and just killing them too. You know, just gale forcing forward and then hitting them with your fourth shot and throwing a grenade at them to do like 75% of their health. Rumor has it that's pretty good too. So he's just a monster. I mean, everyone's familiar with Jhin. He has great wave clear with his grenades. His W has like 1 billion range and can CC someone forever and does pretty good damage. Your traps even give you like pretty good wave clear, and like the slow is pretty nice, honestly, to help prevent ganks and to clog up like bushes and things like that. So he's got a lot of utility. His ultimate, if you're good at hitting that, can do quite a bit of damage. And that movement speed in general just makes him really slippery. When he takes Boots of Swiftness and he starts getting a lot of crit, it's just hard to run him down, especially now with Gale Force. He has an extra dash built in there. Good luck catching him, right? As most champs, especially because he can W to root you in place and drop traps and kite across his traps and all this stuff. He's just very, very difficult to get a hold of as a bruiser. And a lot of assassins were nerfed. You know, Duskblade was really hit very hard. So stuff like Zed, Tau, and Kha'Zix, the things that could dive him, that could get on him and maybe blow him up before he kites him, lost a lot of their all-in potential here. So it's going to be rough to get to him out there. And a lot of people are just not playing tanks, and he's very, very good against squishies because I believe his fourth shot has an execute component. Maybe that's the fourth shot on his ult. But either way, he tends to delete squishy champs, especially because he's going to take the collector a lot of times as well. So historically, not as great against tanks just because he doesn't have the attack speed. He doesn't have any built-in true damage or percentage max health or anything like that. But very, very good against squishies. So that's the kind of meta that we're in right now. A lot of the supports are going to be tanks, but in other roles, the most popular champs are typically not going to be tanks right now. So yeah, just Gale Force into Collector into Infinity Edge, I think is pretty much where you want to be most of the time. Now, Rapid Fire Cannon is pretty good, but Infinity Edge, they just buffed it a lot if you get it third item. You don't want to get it before then, but as a third item, it's great. So that's probably what I would build most of the time. Now, the Eclipse, Duskblade's definitely, you never want to get that anymore. And Eclipse is like, okay, but it's significantly worse than Gale Force is right now. So yeah, Jhin's going to be solid. Miss Fortune's another one. Early game, oppressive champion, brings a lot of utility. Now, her win rate's actually down a lot more than I would think. But she still is going to be pretty strong. Now, I like Gale Force on her, and there are some tricks you can do with her with Gale Force. Oh, well, that's why a lot of people are still going Manamune, which got like gutted on this patch. So they're doing like Manamune Eclipse or something. I don't know what's up with these builds. But the Gale Force is going to be really solid. Same reason as Jhin, you can just run somebody down, just auto Q to finish them off. But if you Gale Force, and then while your Gale Force is going, if you press R, and you're moving forward, I believe it actually spreads your ultimate out to where it's a much wider range. You can hit a much wider hitbox off of it. Now, people can sort of stand in like some weird spots in the middle and not get hit, but that's going to flay it out and make it a lot harder for most enemies to position around that ultimate. And it'll really catch people off guard. Just go watch some videos on YouTube about it. But that's a really powerful interaction with Gale Force, that you can get this super wide ult, especially against teams that might have, 3 or 4 ranged champions. That can be very, very handy in team fights. So, really solid interactions there. Awesome with the Collector. She always has been, just because your ult does so much damage that checks so quickly that it's really likely you're going to be able to snipe those kills away from your allies to make sure that you're the one that's the snowballing and that your Nunu's not getting those last hits, or your Soraka or something on your team. So it is very handy for ensuring a snowball there. And then I think Infinity Edge just is the third item on almost anybody that has crit. It's just so good right now because they made it the 35% critical strike bonus when it used to be 24% before. So that's a pretty big spike there. She's good, and she has a lot of utility. She's fast with her W. She can rotate around the map quickly. She can get very good back timings. Her E, just doing that point-click E on somebody, does quite a decent chunk of damage early. And if you take Comet, which a lot of people are taking on her, I guess some people are taking Dark Harvest on her, but either Comet or Dark Harvest is good. And that just allows your Leona or your Thresh or your Alistar, whoever, just to get a free engage. You just put that E on them. It's like a 40% slow at level 1, and it basically guarantees if they don't have a flash or a dash, they're going to get hooked if it's open field. So that's a very powerful utility early on with the E. You can bounce the Qs to do a tremendous amount of damage in the early game if you're good at bouncing those Qs off of minions. I guess Comet is really powerful, but it actually has a pretty low win rate, like a 50% win rate, versus Dark Harvest actually has 54s. That's a pretty big difference there. You should be getting Dark Harvest then. But yeah, just really strong champ, lots of base damage, lots of really good scaling, great team fighting, great rotations, great utility with her E. It's all around very solid. She doesn't have a dash or a flash. Gale Force does fix that though. So now you have an answer to Blitzcrank hooks or Bard ults or whatever if you have Gale Force. It fixes a lot of your problems if you're on an immobile ADC with Gale Force. So she's going to be very, very strong right now. And then Kai'Sa's another one who's super popular right now, and I think if you can get out of the laning phase, she is going to be really solid. Now, I've seen Gale Force work extremely well with her before, and it does have a much higher win rate, almost a 54% win rate, than Kraken Slayer. Now, getting the Hail of Blades is very good for early game trading and just stacking up your passives. That is nice. But that Gale Force, just being able to dodge once again and just reposition, run somebody down, get those isolations. You can RN and then Gale Force the back line plus Q and just like delete somebody. It just adds a lot to her burst and her isolation potential to have that Gale Force. So I like it that she does scale really well with her passive, her attack speed. She can go invisible off of her E. So she's kind of like just a better version of Vayne right now. I think they have a similar win rate. But the difference is that she can actually do damage in the early game. She's got her Q, especially if you get those isolated missiles, does quite a bit. Even her W poke is very high in the early game if you land that W. And then that ult just allows you to reposition and get those assassinations or just get away from the assassin that's trying to get you. So lots and lots of outplay potential with your ult with Gale Force. So her build, is a little funky. There are some differences. I will say, do not get Manamune, please. They nerf that item really hard, and it's just too weak. You need to be strong in the early game, as strong as you can be with Kai'Sa, because you're going to be staring down the Jins, the Misfortunes, the Tristanas, and stuff like that, and they're just going to run you over if you try to go tier in the early laning phase. So I like that. And then second, my buddy I've been playing with on stream has been doing this as well. The Collector is actually very underrated on her, but really, really strong on pretty much everybody. And it's just because the lethality might seem a little weird because her passive is magic damage, her W is magic damage. So you might be thinking, well, I'm not getting full value out of that. And that's partially true, but it's just the fact that it's got the critical strike chance, the attack damage, it's cheap, it's like 3,000 gold, and it has that execute for the 5% just to ensure that you're going to get some of those last hits and maybe get some more kills and snowball a little bit easier. So I tend to like that. The Runaan's Hurricane was recently changed. It's very cheap. The problem, I think, with going Hurricane after Gale Force, and I don't know the exact math on this, but is that Hurricane no longer has the AD, so it's not going to allow you to upgrade your Q. You need to be able to upgrade the Q. And if you just get Serrated Dirk plus, I think Noon Quiver, that might be enough to upgrade your Q. So definitely Gale Force plus Serrated Dirk is going to upgrade your Q. So I think this is just going to allow you to get the Q upgrade for the double missiles a lot faster than something like Runaan's. And that Q upgrade is massive. I mean, it's a lot more damage, especially in those early game skirmishes where you're going to be able to get some of those isolated missiles. So that's why I think that you really want to be going for the Collector, and there really aren't a lot of substitutes that are in the meta right now for going for that. Your only other option would be to go for something like Manamune or maybe Stormrazor, and I think both of those are probably worse, although Stormrazor does have a similar win rate. Overall, I think Collector's just going to be better. And then third, you just want Infinity Edge, just like pretty much everybody. It's just a super strong third item in a lot of cases. And then Samira is the last one that I'll mention. Now, I am skipping over Vayne, and I just do not like Vayne's early game. It just feels like it's almost impossible to keep up with like a lot of these other early pressure ADCs. Now she does. I mean, she's got a high win rate, so it's coming in from somewhere, but it feels really rough when you have a Vayne in the early game. It feels like you're just wasting your potential if you're playing something like a Leona or an Alistar, because she's just not going to be able to convert those kills most of the time. So Samira is another one that I still think has a lot of potential, even though she has been nerfed several times. If she does get those kills in the early game, then she can snowball out of control. Now, yes, Immortal Shield Bow is not as powerful as something like Kraken. Now, notice, even she, or not Kraken, Gale Force, even she with Gale Force is going to be stronger. So, I don't know. That's something to consider. I have not seen a lot of Samiras get Gale Force, but being able to reposition with your ultimate and just ensure that you get those resets and get those kills seems really strong to me. I mean, it's got a 54% win rate right now. Now, it's not played a lot, but I think a lot of people are just overvaluing Shield Bow. Yes, it is nice. Yes, she does have a very good interaction with lifesteal on her ultimate. So, I don't know. But, I mean, a 5% difference is a very, very big difference. So, you got to remember, I'm pretty sure your ultimate can crit as well. So, yes, it has an interaction with lifesteal, which is very good, but it also has an interaction with crit, which is very good. So just Gale Force and then just Collector might just give you enough damage just to snowball super hard. Now, Bloodthirster is good, but maybe people are just overvaluing the lifesteal. I think they did nerf the lifesteal a little bit a couple of patches ago, but I mean, everyone's just familiar with her. She has her own way to kind of peel herself, and you can even block arrows for your team with your W as well. I think it's your W. The Wind Wall, Blade Whirl. You can block CC, you do a ton of damage, get resets, you pretty much have no cooldown on your ultimates, you're always ready to go. So she does have, a ton of potential there. And if you take Conqueror plus Ravenous Hunter, that might be enough right there, enough lifesteal to be effective with your ult. So I don't know. I'm not a Samira expert, but I do feel like getting at least Gale Force second might be useful, and then maybe if you really feel like you need some lifesteal, you could do Bloodthirster, or Gale Force first, Bloodthirster second, if you really want the lifesteal option, and then Infinity Edge after that. But yeah, very good, especially if you have something like an Alistar, a Rakan. Maokai and Thresh even have very small knockups. You got to look for it to use your passive correctly, because remember, her passive only works on knockups now. But Maokai's Q does apply a small knockup. Thresh's Flay is a very small knockup. Leona doesn't have anything, but a lot of supports will have something that can do a little bit of a knockup. So just make sure you're looking for that. And she is hard to play. You got to practice her, but I think that she is that she's worth it. Okay, Galio. Let's look at mid lane here. Make sure we close this out within an hour, hopefully. I still think Galio is going to be my top pick here, and I believe he was my top last time. I can't remember off the top of my head, but he's bringing so much to the table. He has so much utility. He does a lot of damage. He's got his ultimate to roam to the side lanes really well. He is a tank, so he's kind of hard to kill, especially for some of these mid lane assassins, like your Fizzes, your Dianas, and stuff like that. He's really a pest to deal with. He got really good CC as well. Especially people have been running Rocket Belt on him. Now, they did just nerf Rocket Belt, so it does less burst damage, but he has so much utility that I think it's okay if he does a little less damage. Yes, it's not ideal, but, he's still going to be able to have that massive movement speed increase and be able to land his taunt, and I think that's really the most important thing with his kit when he's in mid lane. And it looks like a lot of people have been trying out Predator on him, presumably just so that you can maybe roam a little bit better, and also so you can use it and just run at him and get your taunt on him, which can be pretty solid. What's the win rate on that? 54%. That's pretty good. So yeah, it looks like a lot. Some people are still taking Aftershock, but Predator might be the way to go. 54 is a lot. That's not a huge sample size, only 900 games, but either way, ton of utility, respectable damage, great roaming the side lanes, just great combinations with lots of other champs that are in the meta right now. I mean, you've got Camille, who's the most popular top laner right now. The classic Camille locks him up with her ult, then Galio ults in. That's pretty much instant death. There's something like a Jarvan that can lock him up, or Alistar engages with his WQ combo and Galio ults on top of that. Just so many nasty combos out there that work really well. Leona engages with her R and then E's in, and Galio goes on top of that. So there's a lot of different combinations that work really well with him. Good damage, good tankiness, great utility, great roaming. I mean, there's just pretty much no flaw with this game. Pretty good wave clear with your Q, and then if it's an empty lane, you can Justice Punch. So brings a lot to the table. Super strong right now. I think he's my overall #1 pick. And then I like Anivia as well. Now, she has been nerfed a little bit, but she still has a pretty high win rate. I mean, 52.5 is quite a bit for mid lane right now. There aren't that many mid laners either that are floating at like 53 or 54. Riot's done a pretty good job of bringing down the stuff that has been over 54 consistently that's played regularly. So that's solid. Now, you'll notice a key thing with Anivia is that she does not use any of the items that got nerfed. So, and that's going to be a theme with at least a couple of the picks here. But if you didn't watch my patch notes video, go watch it. But they basically nerfed almost all of the burst items on assassins and some mages in the mid lane. So they nerfed Protobelt. They did nerf Oxymux, or whatever it's called, the thing that does the Omni Vamp. But they nerfed Protobelt. They nerfed Night Harvester. They nerfed Dustblade, Trinity, Stridebreaker, and Gore Drinker. But she doesn't use these items. She uses Ludens. So anyone that is a Ludens user is going to be, in theory at least, a little bit stronger on this patch. And she loves Ludens. And a lot of people, I've seen people go in Phase Rush on her, and that was really popular with Ludens. She actually is pretty difficult to get a hold of in team fights with all that movement speed. But it looks like Comet is still going to be stronger. Some people are going Electrocute as well, which is pretty good, but it just kind of depends on your playstyle and how often you're trading. But I remember watching a Faker video where he was using Phase Rush, and it's just so hard to get a hold of him. But they did just buff Archangel's staff as well, so that's going to help her out a little bit. Now, it's not a huge buff. It was like 5 ability power, but, it's something. It adds up. But yeah, Anivia's just super well positioned right now. She has excellent wave clear like she always has, but her mana costs are so much more manageable on this E. They lowered it down to like, I don't remember what it is. It was like 20 mana off per E or something. It was something nuts. Now they like over buffed her and then they nerfed her back a little bit. But she's still going to be super strong. She can spam these E's. She can, just activate her R, turn it off, turn it back on. So she can reposition her R a lot in team fights now. The stun is still going to be pretty strong. Your W is pretty strong. And there's just a lot of tools in the toolkit that give that movement speed, right? With the Phase Rush option, Ludens option. So there's a lot of stuff that helps her reposition so she's not as much of a sitting duck as she has been in the past. And just the damage output, the zone of control, the siege defense, siege offense. She's just one of the best zone of control mages in the game right now. She's super, super strong. I think they increased the movement speed of Flash Frost as well, so it's a lot easier to hit the stun. So, she's a terror. She's very, very good right now. So definitely consider picking her up. She's not that hard to play, I don't think. Getting the wall right, there's a little bit of trickiness to her, but overall, she's not going to be that bad if you want to pick her up and try to win some games. Now, her one knock is she does not roam to side lanes very well. So if your side lanes... Now, she can punish if the enemy roams. You can put them in the tower and, make them lose a lot of plates and a lot of minions. But, if your bot lane gets double killed and they get a dragon, it may not be worth it. So you got to be very careful with that. You have to have good warding, buy those control wards, make sure you're actively pinging, letting people know, and just keep the pressure on them, right? Just keep pushing them into lane so they can't roam. Especially when you have blue buff. Hopefully you're getting some blue buffs, like maybe second or third blue buff, if you ask nicely for your jungler. But you should be able to keep them in the tower where you're not letting them roam. And taking something like teleport can help out with that too. Okay, Malzahar is another one that I think is really unappreciated right now, or underappreciated, I should say. Pull him up over here. Nice, respectable win rate, 52.3. And he's another one that his items did not get nerfed, and a lot of other people did get nerfed, and he just brings a lot to the table, right? He's very good with the double burn, the Liandry's into Demonic Embrace. Don't get Hourglass on him. I think Hourglass is just a huge trap item the vast majority of the time. Yeah, the mask has a 2% higher win rate. Rylai's is actually quite good on him too, and that can help you kite out a little bit because your little minions do apply Rylai's, your little voidlings, whenever you cast it, whenever you send those after people. So it's gonna be pretty good. But yeah, just really strong overall. Good resistance against engage with his shield. Really good wave clear. Excellent just point click ultimate. Great gank assist pretty much. Whenever your ultimate's up, just call in your jungler, and then just flash and press R on them and they're dead. Basically, if your jungler shows up. So very, very strong champion. Great utility. He's got a great silence as well. Can take dragons, barons, things like that pretty quickly because of the double burn. So, this really strong champion overall. Highly recommend him. Victor is another one that was like super powerful early in the preseason. Then he kind of got nerfed a bit and fell off. But I think it's his time to come back and shine because he is a Ludens user. And I was typing in Ludens there. And scales super well. Now, what they did, if you haven't kept up with the preseason, that's made him a lot stronger, is that now he basically has an alternative currency, and I don't remember exactly how he gets it off of his passive. I think it's like a gangplank by farming, getting kills, getting assists, things like that. You get this currency, I don't remember what it's called, but you can basically spend that on your upgrade. So in other words, you don't have to pay real gold to upgrade an item anymore, which frees him up and gives him a ton of extra gold to actually buy items. So now he can buy Ludens, he can buy Lichbane and do a ton of damage in the early to mid game, and then he's still going to scale super well in the late game after he gets his upgrades. So I think he's going to be super strong right now, even though he has been nerfed a little bit. I mean, if you just look at that win rate chart there, he definitely goes up a ton once you get to that 20 to 25 minute mark and you're able to get a couple of those evolutions. He's going to be very solid. Is a little bit light on CC compared to someone like Anivia or Malzahar, but he does have a lot of that built-in mobility with the Q upgrade, and just does a lot of scaling damage with his ultimate and his Death Ray or whatever, his E, once you get the upgrade of that. So, very strong champion. Definitely someone to pick up, especially if you don't need the CC as much. If you just want that raw power, like hard carry potential in team fights, then he's going to be a pretty good option. And then Echo's another one that I think is pretty strong now. They did end up nerfing Protobelt, but he still brings so much to the table. He's got good wave clear, well, pretty good wave clear. Not Anivia level wave clear, but pretty solid. He's got that shield, the up to 2-second stun if you hit your W, his anti-assassin, with his R. He's just tons and tons of outplay potential with him. Really good movement speed to run people down and reposition in fights. So very high skill cap champion, but very solid. Nice bonus that he can be flexed into the jungle right now as well. So that can kind of help you up or help you out if you want to early pick Echo. They don't know if it's going jungle or mid. So he's going to be really solid. Let me go ahead and just get a drink here. Okay, and let's make sure we keep moving here. But yeah, everyone's probably pretty familiar with Echo. Yes, Protobelt got nerfed. Yes, that doesn't bode well for him. But a lot of other champions also got nerfed in the mid lane, so he's still gonna be pretty solid. Now, not a great matchup into Malzahar because Malzahar just point click ults him and he's gonna die before he can use his ult. So some of these are kind of rough matchups into him, but I think it's a pretty good matchup into a lot of the other champions out there. Now, Fizz is still pretty good, too. I'll just go ahead and mention Fizz. He does still have about a 53% win rate, but I still think that Night Harvester and Protobelt are going to hurt him a little bit. He can still delete people, but I don't know. He's still going to be solid. I just feel like his matchup into some of these, like Galio, Malzahar, Anivia, are not going to be fantastic, but you can roam really well to side lanes and get some plays. So if you do want to roam a lot, he can be a good option. Okay. Next up here, and we'll have to go through the last two a little bit faster. Nunu, I've talked about him a ton. He just always manages to have a 53 or 54% win rate. And remember, that's very rare. In a lot of the roles that we've looked at so far, almost nothing has 53 or 54% win rate. Everything's like 51 or 52. So to have almost 54 right now is really saying something. in this meta. But, you know, he still roams extremely well early on, or ganks, I should say. Junglers are kind of always roaming, but farms really well and safely, has high HP. It's very difficult to invade him. He's always going to get the last hit on any camps, right, with his Chomp plus his Smite if he wants it, including Barons, Dragons, all that stuff. Incredibly difficult to steal him, to steal objectives from him. Incredibly difficult to invade and, you know, really get any major advantage on him. So he's just super safe early on, and then the snowball ganks are just absolutely brutal. It's so hard to get away from that. Half the time, even if you flash, he can curve the snowball around and still hit you with it, or he can just drop the snowball and then just start hitting you with his E, and it's really difficult to get away from him. So he just has a lot of CC. He's healthy. He's tanky. His ultimate does a lot of damage in team fights. It demands an answer. You have to CC it, or you know, someone's going to die a lot of the time. And then he, even with his passive, has that built-in extra movement speed and extra, I believe, attack speed that can buff up the 80 carries, which are very strong right now if they get some items. So he's just kind of the total package, right? Tanky, lots of CC, just really good utility, pretty good scaling as far as the damage goes. He's not going to do as much, obviously, as like, you know, a hyper carry like a Graves or something in the jungle, but considering he's a tank and everything else that he has, he can actually put up some pretty decent damage. So you just want to go Sunfire, which is still, I believe, going to be the best, even though it has been nerfed quite a bit. It's still going to be really solid on him. Although, I don't know, I haven't tried this. Frostfire Gauntlet does have a really high win rate right now, overall. So I don't know. Maybe it is time to try out Frostfang again, but by and large, Sunfire is still going to be the way to go. Then you have a few options. I think getting like Bramble Vest can be helpful early. Deadman's Plate is really good because it helps increase how fast your snowball goes and how much area you can cover. Helps you rotate. And then Spirit Visage is obviously going to be really solid because you have a heal with your Q and then you have a shield with your ultimate. So he gets a lot of benefit out of that. But yeah, just super strong, good early game pressure jungler. And then next up, I'm going to put Rammus, and he's going to be a lot better at low reload brackets, but he'll still probably be pretty good into Platinum. Another one that has like a 53% win rate. So yes, Sunfire has been nerfed, but yes, Rammus is still going to be really strong. It's kind of like almost like Nunu, mini Nunu here, right? Like you can gank really well with your Powerball in the early game. You do have that taunt, which is very powerful, especially once you get it leveled up. I think it goes to a 2.25 second root, or taunt rather, which is going to be solid. He does take towers really quickly too, so if you do end up getting a gank, getting a kill, and you have your ultimate, you can just activate your ultimate near the tower, and it does like thousands of damage to the tower, so that can just help you get an extra couple of plates there, especially if you take Demolish. I'm not really sure why you'd go Font on him over Demolish, because I would just want to double down on that tower taking, and I would just find a lane where they use their flash, or where you have a really high probability of either getting a kill or forcing them out of lane, get them out of there, and then just ult and use that Demolish proc and you know, really delete people. He does a surprising amount of damage later on in the game, especially if they have a lot of melee champions. With his defensive ball curl and his ultimate, you can really do a lot of damage to people. And this has a very low cooldown also. People forget that, like, once you level this up, it goes to a 6-second cooldown. So you can just keep powerballing over and over again. And it has pretty high damage, like 240 base damage as well. So you can just kind of keep repositioning and running people down with Rammus. So I think he's a lot better than people believe he is, especially at lower elo brackets. So definitely consider giving him a shot. Okay, Talia's another one who's been pretty new over the last couple of patches. They gave her a massive, massive buff a couple of patches ago. I don't remember how much it was, but she does like 200% extra damage to minions now. Because her Q used to do reduced damage to monsters, because they nerfed her, I think it was like 2 years ago. She was very popular in Korea in the jungle position, and they really just kind of gutted her. And they've slowly started giving her some of that power back, but they just like really hit the gas a couple of patches ago. And basically her Q does not do reduced damage to monsters anymore. So you can really shred through that jungle quickly now. And she's just so hard to deal with. You know, she's got Ludens as well to help her reposition. She can gank with her R very easily. She does a ton of damage with her Q later on in the game and just has great zone of control. It's so hard to dive her between her E, being able to knock people forward or backward, her W, being able to throw out that slow field and just spamming those Qs and getting that extra movement speed off of Ludens. It's just, she's a terror to try to engage on. So she does a lot of damage. She can hard carry, from the jungle position. She is a bit harder to play, so you have to get used to it. But especially people are using this phase rush build here with Ludens, kind of like what I was talking about with Anivia earlier, just to make it almost impossible for bruisers to get a hold of her. So, super strong champ right now, pretty high skill cap, but if you can pull it off, I think she is good. They did nerf her on this patch a little bit, where her passive, where she doesn't move as fast through the jungle when she's out of combat. I think she has to be out of combat to activate it, but you're in combat most of the time in the jungle anyway, so it does help you rotate a little bit. They knocked it down from 20% to 12% in the early game, and then later I believe it's the same. It's like 40%. But nevertheless, if you're looking for, a carry mage jungler, I think she's one of the better options to consider right now. Fiddlesticks is another one. He just got nerfed this patch, so they first of all they nerfed Night Harvester and Protobelt, which he uses both of those, and then they nerfed him directly. His W is 1 second longer at all ranks, so he was like a 54%, now he's 52.5%. I haven't played him since these nerfs, so I'm not exactly sure how his clear is going to feel after these changes, but he has a lot of power in his kit even without that. As long as you can clear fairly safely and not get blown up on your first clear, which usually you can make it. You might have to use a smite at a time when you don't want to, but he can double clear Raptors in red and blue and Gromp at the same time, so he is still going to have a pretty fast clear, I think. Night Harvester is probably still going to be where you want to be. He does have really, really high AP ratios, so it does help that the Night Harvester has 10 extra AP on it, even though you're losing 50 damage. I don't think it's going to make up for it. Maybe in a team fight, if you're able to channel your ult on multiple people for a long period of time, maybe it's worth it. But he still brings so much utility, right? He's got the fear for the 2.25 second fear, potentially. He has the silence. He has the extreme damage on his ultimate. He just brings a whole lot to the table. He has all the extra free vision off of his little trinkets. So he brings a lot to the table. Tons of damage, lots of CC. Still going to be a very, very strong champion in solo queue, I think. Especially if you have a tank or some other kind of engage in the support role, then I think he's going to be really solid. And Elise is another one that I'll put on here, and this is, going to be a lot better at really high elo, but I think if you can get proficient on her, you still can be good early. But this is my early pressure carry pick of the patch, I think, if you're into that. So Graves surprisingly got completely blasted, just 2 AD, the meme. He got his base AD reduced by 2, and now all of a sudden he's a 46% win rate or something. It dropped his win rate 3% off of 2 AD, which is nuts. But maybe there's some other stuff going on there too. But yeah, as far as early pressure junglers go, a lot of them are just not doing very well right now, right? At least in solo queue, Nidalee's 48%, Graves is 46%, Shaco's 50%. So there's not a ton of options. I guess Rek'Sai's doing all right now, but Olaf's doing pretty well with 52%. Now, I don't have Kha'Zix on the list, too, which is something that, a lot of people might note there, but Duskblade was a big deal. That dropped his win rate by 2%. So he does have some other options, but it just feels like he just doesn't do a lot if he's really far behind. With Elise, at least, not only does she have a very strong early game, so she can totally blow people up, but she has some utility late game, right? If you hit somebody with that ranged cocoon, that can serve as a pseudo-engage. Later on in the game, the rest of your team can follow up and kill them, right? So you're not completely reliant on being able to get a flank and destroy the backline. That's obviously one of the best things you can do, but at least you have that little bit of utility. And she just does usual Elise things. She clears very quickly. She can take dragons very quickly in the early game and use her spiders to tank it. She can dive towers exceptionally well early on, so that's part of why she's used in really high level play. but very good at diving towers and blowing people up. So brings a lot to the table. Very high skill cap champ. You have to get used to her. You have to apply that early pressure to make her valuable, but very, very strong champion in the right circumstances. And then finally, and this will be our last little bit here, and we'll just go just a little bit over. I think that Darius is going to be number one top laner right now. Now, Stridebreaker did get nerfed a little bit, but he's still going to kill you. Like, you know, losing that extra, whatever, 10% damage on Stridebreaker, I don't think is going to matter. And that's really the new evolution that has made Darius so strong these days, is that extra little gap closer, right? Because it applies the slow, it adds that little bit of gap close to it, and then it's just got all kinds of stats that he wants. Now, it does not have the Sheen proc for extra damage like Trinity Force does. Just being able to, you know, just follow somebody whenever they flash. I don't think the range is quite as long as Flash, but it's still just going to be a super strong item on him. Allows you to stick to him really well with that 30 extra movement speed with the Heroic Gate. And he just does a ton of damage, has really good healing. He's great into tanks. He's great into squishies. That Steric's Gauge is just absolutely ridiculous. It buys him so much time to be able to get those last couple of bleed stacks and execute. And then people are even getting Dead Man's Plate in the build now too, just to double down on that movement speed and just being able to engage. So just really, really hard to kite him out now with those items. So yeah, he's just super strong. There's a lot of different builds you can go. I mean, some people were trying Gore Drinker and stuff like that. It's like, you just want to kill him, I think. The Stridebreakers is way, way better, I think, than Gore Drinker, especially after the nerfs to Gore Drinker on this patch. Because the attack speed's actually, like, not bad on him, right? Because he does want to auto attack and get those bleed stacks up. So he's just going to be very strong overall. There's not a lot to say about it. I mean, I think it's really just, like I said, it's just the items. He's always been good, but it's really the Stridebreaker in combination with Steric's Gauge that's just really throwing him over the top because of just how big that shield is, which is just absolutely nuts. It's like an 800 shield or something whenever you proc this thing. It's like their whole health bar is a shield, and it's only a 60-second cooldown. So anyways, very, very good champ. Really good if you want a hard carry top. And the thing is, he's good at, like, team fights, too. It's not like he's just a bully in lane, like he's a Renekton or a Pantheon or something that's going to fall off in late-game team fights. It's not. Like, he still can just, like, completely murder everybody if he gets fed in these team fights. So I think he's going to be really, really dangerous. And then Malphite is another one who he did get nerfed directly on this patch, and Sunfire Cape and all this other stuff has been nerfed, but you know what? He can still just press R, knock people up, start a fight, and sometimes that's good enough. And this is probably the champ you want to play if you're auto-filled top, and you just want to continue to be effective. Now, Frostfire Gauntlet does actually have a pretty high win rate on him right now. I'm not sure exactly what's up with that. I guess that you do get that extra slow field for 1.5 seconds when you auto, so you can Q to kind of, run them down a little bit if you need to after your ult, and then you can, just auto attack them and get the slow, I guess. But, I mean, something's going on with it, 'cause it's got a 5% higher win rate than Sunfire does right now. So I haven't ever really played this. I've never bought this on any champ in the preseason. I've always got Sunfire on the tanks. So I don't know. Maybe it's a lot better than I think it is. But yeah, the items really don't matter that much, to be perfectly honest. Like, you do want to get this. This is the highest win rate item right now, but there are a lot of different items you can get second and third. It's really just all about, just finding those solid ultimates and deleting people. And he's a real pest. I'm sure everybody knows he's really annoying to deal with if you're a squishy champion, especially if it doesn't have a flash or a dash. Now, I will say, if the ADC is getting the proper items, if they are getting Gale Force, and they have hands, then they'll probably be able to dodge out of your ultimate in a lot of situations, and that can be very frustrating. So, get your kills in while you can, get your elo while you can, before everybody realizes that Gale Force is super OP and you can no longer hit 80 carries anymore, that have under 100 ping with the Gale Force. So, anyways, very strong, very one-dimensional. Like I said, lower elos, or if you're auto-filled, this is definitely where you should be. I think there can be some better choices, though, at some of those higher elo brackets. And he does have some tough matchups, like Darius is a nightmare. I think Nasus is probably pretty rough as well. But you're probably not going to win lane as Malphite all the time. But you will be very effective later on in the game. Now, he can win if your jungler comes up there and you have your ult up. It should be a free kill in a lot of circumstances, but we'll see. Now, Nasus is another one that I just want to bring up here, and his win rate doesn't look phenomenal, but I've played against this champion so many times in the last couple of weeks, and he is extremely frustrating to deal with as someone who does not play top lane, because it just feels like he's so relevant now. Once he just gets Divine Sunder, all of a sudden he can win these 1v1s top lane. Like, it's no longer you got to wait for 3 items or, 700 stacks on Nasus before you can do anything. You can start killing people off of 1 item now. And it's this thing combined with his ultimate, or with his with both his ultimate but then also his lifesteal off of his passive. It's just so much healing. Like, this ends up healing for, I think, 100% of the damage dealt, 10% of their max health. Restore 50% of the enhanced damage. And it's guaranteed, I think, to do 150% of your base damage. So it's not quite as big of a Sheen proc as Trinity Force. Actually, Trinity does have a higher win rate, but I don't know, man. Maybe this item just seems super OP on him. Because, like, you don't really care about the attack speed as Nasus, right? You're just, like, playing for Qs. Like, it kind of matters. But I would personally just rather have, like, the health, the ability haste, and, all of that other stuff that goes along with it. But anyways, this champ is a menace, right? Like, he gets his stacks early, but then he has a lot of utility later. He's tanky. He has a ton of lifesteal when he has Divine Sunder, plus all of his other nonsense. He's just really, really difficult to kill. He does percentage health with his ultimate. That Wither makes it very, very difficult to run away, or if you're an attack speed champion, to even do anything. Like, if he gets a Wither on your AD carry in a team fight, it's over. If that AD carry doesn't have a Quicksilver Sash, they're not doing anything for 5 seconds. And then he even has some armor shred off of his E. So he has pretty respectable utility, and in the past, you could just bully him early and just not ever let him do anything, but now it just feels very difficult to completely bully him out because he just needs 1 item. So, anyways, maybe I'm overreacting a little bit to Nasus, but I think especially if you're like Platinum and lower, that, he's a real menace right now that definitely should be respected, and a lot of it's because of that item. Okay, last couple ones. I think Wukong is still extremely good, and a lot of people are sleeping on him. He's been about 53% for a while now. But he just brings a lot to the table. He's got that armor crush. He has the ultimate for the AoE CC for team fights. He's got the outplay potential with his decoy. Does pretty strong damage, especially off of 1 or 2 items. Looks like he's going Gore Drinker these days. Even with the nerf, I guess that's what people want to do. Looks like almost anything's good on him, to be honest, right? Like, you've got Gore Drinker, Trinity, Eclipse, all being like pretty strong items on him, and then just getting the Ravenous Hydra on top of that. Looks like that's really kind of the new innovation, right? Just getting that extra Omnivamp off of your ultimate, the extra CDR, who really strong. So if you end up going Gore Drinker plus Ravenous Hydra, it's going to take a very long time to take you down. So yeah, really solid utility. And then Camille's the other one who's like super popular, but this is like a higher elo or like really high skill cap champ. Very versatile, excellent split pusher, excellent fighter, but you have to know how to play her correctly. You have to be able to jump key abilities with her R, right? You have to be able to, hit people with your hook shots and play around that. You have to know your all-in thresholds. But yeah, this Divine Sunder plus Ravenous Hydra build, which you're seeing on a lot of these champs, just double lifesteal first couple of items, is going to be very powerful on her. And it's going to make it really hard to duel her once she gets both those items in the side lane. So I think if you want to do a split pusher, then she's going to be really solid. And then also there's so many combos that work too. I mean, just your ult, if the jungler is there, is probably going to be, a kill. But then your ult plus Galio later on in the game, or is anything else that can follow up your ultimate when you hold people still just to set them up and your team knocks them down. Can be super useful. Very nice, so a lot of ADCs aren't going to be able to get away from you too. In a team fight later on in the game, if you do get one of those flanks, they're not going to be able to Gale Force out. They're not going to be able to, dash out. You're going to be able to get that isolation fight on them. potentially, unless it's Tristana. Tristana can use her ult to blow you back through your walls and get out, but most of the ADCs are not going to be able to get out of that if you get a really nice flank. So that is very handy as well. Then the last couple picks I was mentioned, there are quite a few top laners that are good right now. I'm not a big fan of Pantheon. I still think he falls off later. He is better than he was, but it's not a big fan of him right now. Shin is still good. The nerf to Sunfire is rough. It does take him a little while to come online with Titanic. I believe his matchup in a Darius is probably pretty bad. Matchup in a Nasa is probably pretty bad. But he can still be kind of effective. Who are some other ones? Volibear's like all right. Maokai still has a lot of CC. Urgot's okay, but not amazing. Ornn is phenomenal in Pro right now just because you get that guaranteed value off of his items. You have really good engage, really good knock-up. So I think at like really high elo, or if you're very good on Ornn, I think that Ornn is going to be one of the best pure tanks right now. It's because he has a lot of that guaranteed value. And I think that's about it as far as like the notables in the top lane. I don't remember where Mordekaiser was, but I've seen like some okay games with Mord. He's at 48%. Fiora also can be okay. She's at 48%. Aatrox is seeing a lot of play in Pro. He can be alright, but a lot of these champs are just pretty far under 50%. Then, of course, you have like your super high skill caps, your like Irelias and Akali's, and that type of stuff can be solid too, but you have to be very good on them, and they have to get really far ahead. Of the type of fairly high skill cap champs, I would just play Camille if you're just wanting to learn something right now. But anyways, that's going to be it. Thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you next time.